Okay, let's dive into this explainer. Today, we're looking at a story that is honestly as heartbreaking as it is revealing about the hidden infrastructure we rely on every single day. We're going to examine a recent, tragic workplace accident in Powners Grove, Illinois, that claimed the life of a 33-year-old contractor. It's a sobering reminder of the invisible, yet absolutely essential systems running right beneath our feet, and the immense human effort it takes to keep them functioning. And while we want to approach this with the utmost empathy for the family, the friends, and the colleagues involved in this loss, we are also going to objectively break down exactly what happened, the regulations that are supposed to prevent it, and how local governments process these kinds of events in the immediate aftermath.
Picture this. It's Monday, July 27th, 2026, and severe weather is moving through the Chicago area. Now, a severe weather forecast might just mean a canceled outdoor event for most of us, right? But for two contractors working deep underground in Powners Grove, it quickly became a life-or-death situation. As a major rain event suddenly flooded the area, these two workers were swept away, completely lost in the dangerous, surging water conditions of a storm sewer. It's a truly terrifying scenario that instantly turned a routine infrastructure maintenance project into a desperate rescue mission.
So, what exactly were these workers doing down there in the first place? To understand this, we need to deconstruct a bit of industry jargon. They were performing what's called trenchless pipe rehabilitation. Essentially, this is a clever method used to fix old, deteriorating pipes without having to rip up the streets and roads above. Workers actually go inside the pipe and insert a new liner, often by spraying it directly onto the walls. In this case, Ivan Perez, who worked for a Houston-based company called Vortex Lining Systems, and his coworker were working inside a massive, 11-foot-wide concrete pipe. This specific culvert, which carries St. Joseph Creek beneath the downtown area, was installed way back in the 1960s, and it desperately needed maintenance. But doing this work without digging a trench means you literally have to go into the confined space yourself.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how fast conditions can deteriorate when you're working below ground. Let's walk through the timeline. At 12:50 p.m. on July 27th, workers on the street level frantically flagged down Powners Grove police, reporting two men trapped underground. The fire department immediately launched a technical rescue operation. By 3:15 p.m., they managed what felt like a partial miracle. One worker was rescued about 200 feet from the entry point and hospitalized in good condition. But then, as the hours ticked by, the terrifying reality of that subterranean environment took hold. By 8:30 p.m., officials had to make the agonizing decision to transition from a rescue mission to a recovery mission. It wasn't until 5 p.m. the next day, July 28th, that Ivan Perez's body was finally recovered.
Now you might be wondering, why exactly did emergency crews have to suspend those active rescue efforts that first evening? Well, the hazards of underground conditions are severe and they are highly unpredictable. See, even long after the rainfall ends up on the street level, storm sewer systems continue to carry massive amounts of runoff from the surrounding neighborhoods. It's like a funnel. This creates surging, incredibly dangerous high water levels that made it simply too hazardous for emergency responders to continue their search. On top of that, rescuers had to actively monitor air quality and wait for potentially combustible or toxic gases to clear out before they could safely re-enter the space. It's an invisible, treacherous environment that operates by entirely different rules than the surface.
To really grasp the broader context of this tragedy, we have to zoom out and look at a sobering number: 60. According to data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, between 2011 and 2018, more than 60 people died nationwide in confined spaces, specifically in places like sewers, manholes, and storm drains. That is a lot. This tells us that what happened in Powners Grove is not some isolated anomaly. It's part of a known, persistent, macro-level danger associated with maintaining our municipal infrastructure. Because these dangers are so prevalent, there's heavy government oversight. The Illinois Department of Labor's OSHA division actually routinely inspects municipal water and sewer departments specifically to mitigate these high-risk hazards. And following the Powners Grove incident, federal OSHA, which covers private contractors, officially launched an investigation. They now have a window of up to 6 months to rigorously review operations and determine if the contracting company followed all required safety procedures and protocols before this tragedy occurred.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because these investigations center around the specific regulations OSHA mandates to protect workers in these environments. When a job requires entering a confined space, it isn't just about showing up with a hard hat. The strict pre-entry preparation steps include verifying that every single entrant, attendant, and supervisor has certified confined space training. They have to issue a written entry permit that meticulously documents all hazards. Crucially, they must assign a dedicated, trained attendant who stays entirely outside the space to monitor communication and execute a rescue plan if needed. And, highly relevant to our story today, they are expressly required to review weather forecasts and absolutely delay operations if rain is expected, because sudden stormwater surges cause severe engulfment hazards.
But despite those rigorous rules, safety gaps are shockingly common. The IL-OSHA fact sheet highlights several frequent violations that workers have to navigate daily. These include the total lack of written permit-required confined space programs, failing to perform hazard checks for personal protective equipment, and inadequate ventilation for toxic gases. For example, sewer work must completely halt if levels of hydrogen sulfide reach 10 parts per million or greater. Inspectors also frequently find blocked electrical panels, missing exit signs, and unmarked vehicles. These are purely factual, analytical metrics of safety, but they can literally make the difference between a routine shift and a fatal accident.
Which brings us to a really complex question. What happens after a tragedy? Think about it. When the recovery mission ends, when the initial news reports fade away, and while the OSHA investigation silently churns on in the background, how does the vast bureaucratic machinery of local infrastructure maintenance react? The answer is both practical and pretty sobering.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark chronological juxtaposition. On Monday, July 27th, a contractor tragically drowned during a trenchless pipe rehabilitation project. Just 8 days later, on Tuesday, August 4th, the DuPage County Public Works Committee voted to renew a separate, multi-year trenchless pipeline rehabilitation contract. This renewal was done under the county's Omnia Cooperative Agreement. Now, it's for a different contractor, Incitiform Technologies, instead of Vortex lining systems, but they utilize the exact same trenchless technique that just proved fatal.
Local reporting on that meeting states neutrally, no committee discussion of the July 27th death or the ongoing OSHA investigation was noted in the meeting minutes. And honestly, this is the reality of the bureaucratic aftermath. The massive capital plans, the budgets, and the vital infrastructure work required to keep modern society functioning simply continue without public acknowledgement of the incident in those meetings. The machine of local government, responsible for everything from our roads to our pipes, just moves forward uninterrupted.
So the crucial point we are left with is this question. At what human cost do we maintain the essential, invisible systems running beneath our feet? The water drains from our streets, our pipes flow, and our cities function seamlessly. But it relies entirely on individuals willing to descend into dangerous, confined spaces to do the heavy lifting. The tragedy in Powners Grove reminds us of the inherent, very real risks of this unseen labor. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. I hope this gives you a deeper, more analytical understanding of the infrastructure you rely on daily, and leaves you curious to learn more about the world hidden right below the pavement.